Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. We are getting ready for the Washington Commanders to come into Lumen Field this Sunday to take on the Seahawks after a really tough loss this last week. Hopefully they've put that in their rear view mirror, and moving forward, we rebound against a team that I think we can rebound against. They've got a really suspect defense that gives up a lot of passing plays, so it's a get-right game potentially for Geno. Their offense on the other side of the ball is challenging. They throw the ball more than any other team in the NFL, but that also means that their quarterback, Howell, is susceptible to some interceptions. We happen to be pretty decent at that. So I think this sets up to be a pretty favorable game for the Seahawks. How you doing, Keith? Welcome in.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a good football team that's coming in. They haven't been good, and they traded away some good talent at the trade deadline. So they're clearly playing for next year, and I think they, as a franchise, would prefer to lose this game and many others. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. You look at this and you go, okay, this better be a win. If this isn't a win, then you can kind of just throw the rest of the season away for Seattle. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I would say that this is, they get into all must-win games at the second half of the season for sure. Seattle's 5-2. If they have any playoff aspirations, they certainly want to win this game. This is a game on the schedule where you're like, yeah, we've got this game. I mean, Washington started 2-0. They've lost 5 of the last 6. They did win last week, but their defense is bottom dwellers in the NFL. Their offense is mid-tier. I think Sam Howell has done an admirable job leading this offense. Eric Bieniemy is their coordinator. Everyone's heard of him, coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs. Ron Rivera is still the coach over there. But you're right. They've traded away a few assets. Not just a few. They're one of their best assets in Sweat and Chase Young. Mm-hmm. And I think they're just hoping to both players probably leaving in free agency to get out of that franchise next season. So they were trying to get what they could get to help rebuild this team. So they're definitely in that mode. Seattle should be taking care of business on this, but you never know. I mean, you just get your butt handed to you in a game in the NFL, and it changes things. It just does. Either a team rebounds from that and they just wash it out completely, or it affects them deeply and it hangs with them. And I'm just very curious as to see how Seattle responds to this. I think obviously Pete Carroll's done a great job in his tenure with the Seahawks in getting a team ready, especially after a big time loss like that, to rebound and be ready to play. And so I'm not terribly concerned with that, but it is something I've thought about this week for sure.
Yeah. I mean, during the Pete Carroll era, when have the Seahawks lost back-to-back games other than the 1 year when Russ was hurt? It's not a common experience. This is a team that wins a lot of games and has been double-digit wins almost every year that Pete's been here. So, yeah, I mean, these teams tend to rebound. The concern, though, is how bad the loss was. You go back to and just look over, like, them getting thumped like that, just in all phases of the game, is pretty rare. And it's happened twice already this year. Once in week 1 and then last week. Now they
this one was far worse,
I
believe.
Yeah. I mean, they rebounded after week 1 really well. But when it happens the second time, when you just go get, crushed like that, you start to wonder, I'm like, okay, where's the psyche of this team? Where are they mentally? Because this is a new situation. This isn't something we've seen from a Pete Carroll team.
I think in the first game, you kind of washed that out as being the first game, and they weren't ready to play for whatever reason, and the Rams came in and an inferior team beat them. In this instance, it was clearly a superior team that beat them, and a very humbling experience to get beaten down like that in the NFL. And you're right, it doesn't happen very often. And you do kind of wonder about the psychology of the team, and where they think they sit after a loss like that. They thought coming in, they made a big trade for Williams because they wouldn't have made that trade unless they thought they were ready to make a run and win now, and all of that that comes with that. And the very next opportunity to play on the field, they just don't show up at all. And so it is I'm very curious as to see how they come out. I would imagine there's a lot of pride on that team. There's a lot of good talent, good players, all the way up and down, including the coaching staff is just very competitive. So I'm not too terribly worried, but there is that just tinge, I would imagine it's the same thing that on the team. There's just that little now question mark. Who are we? What are we? What are we made of? And that hopefully, guys like Bobby Wagner, and Diggs, and maybe even Geno Smith on the other side will kind of pull this team together, rally this team, and get these guys ready to go. Of course, Pete Carroll, I'm not worried about that. This is a good team though to face when you do need to rebound. I mean, the Commanders are like 27th in passing yards allowed, 19 touchdowns. They've only picked the ball off 6 times. They rank 30th in explosive plays allowed, 20 or more yards in the league. I would say that, as far as being a defense that they can get the job done, this would be it. Even if Geno has an okay game, I still see them passing for over 250 yards pretty easily against this defense. And DK Metcalf against their corners having opportunities to shine. And of course, Tyler Lockett and Njigba having opportunities. In fact, Njigba, to me, might be one of the keys to this game. I think Samuel is a guy, their slot corner, that may not be available for this game, Curtis Samuel. And so we'll see. Or not Curtis Samuel. What am I saying? Their cornerback. Who am I thinking of, Keith? I don't know. Maybe it's Kendall Fuller. I think somebody that's able to play in the slot, and maybe it's Emmanuel Forbes. I can't remember. Somebody's going to be was on their injured list. Might not be available. But Curtis Samuel.
Emmanuel Forbes.
Yeah, Curtis Samuel.
Except for wide receiver. I mean, he's got an Achilles injury, but he's been full practice this week. Kendall Fuller, it didn't practice, but his was just rest. According
and both
to the
those guys have been playing very poorly anyway. So, I mean, Fuller's passer rating against this year is 118, 13th worst mark in the NFL. Forbes is 10.8 yards allowed per reception, which is 6th worst in the NFL. I think we're going to be able to get some big plays on these guys, pass underneath, pretty much do whatever we want. We get the tight ends involved, which we've been kind of lacking the last few weeks. I think that helps us improve. And the key to this game, Keith, and we've said this all year, but it's just crazy, is third down conversions. We were 1 for 12 last week. Obviously a really good defense that just didn't allow us to do anything. But we didn't dictate terms at all last week. And we've been struggling with that all year. I think I wrote down in my notes that we were like 29th in the NFL in third down conversions, now below 40%. I think it's close to like 37% conversion rate on the season for the Seahawks on third down, which is, I couldn't possibly have imagined that given where we were at with this roster at the beginning of the season. Looked like we were going to have a top 5 offense, improved from last year where we were top 10 already. And geez, we've just not been able to do anything this year. And I don't have any explanation for it. We're better at running back. We're better at wide receiver. We're better, perceivably, at least perception wise, along the offensive line, even though we've had our subs in there quite a bit this year.
That's the thing is I don't think we're better because of all the injuries. They've been just shuffling guys in and out along the offensive line all season at all 5 positions. And that's part of it. And then part of it's just Geno hasn't been good. So if he can get back to the level of where he was at last year, where he was completing, 70+% of his passes instead of being in the mid to low 60s, that'll help. And to stop taking basically he's kind of gone a little bit to playing like Russell Wilson, where he's holding onto the ball too long and trying to throw everything deep down the field instead of getting the ball out of his hands quickly for easy completions. And the team needs him to get back to being himself and not trying to be Russ, because
it's that himself?
What?
Is that himself?
I don't know. Look what he did last year. Why was he capable of getting the ball out of his hand quickly last year and he's not this year?
What do you think about Waldron's role in that formula?
There are passes to be had short. When you watch the all 22, you'll see Njigma or Fant open early for a quick 5, 6, 7 yard gain. There were also some key
plays though,
and he's not taking
Baltimore that there's also some key plays you can go look at on all 22 against Baltimore on third down. Happened 3 separate times where they ran routes where this is third and long, where nobody was underneath. All 3 wide receivers ran routes, plus the tight end ran routes beyond like 15 yards. 3 separate times on third down attempts in that game. I'm not saying the whole game was like that. I'm just saying there was no outlet.
There are, but when you're third and long, especially when you're down by a bunch and you're trying to get yourself back into the game.
Yes, of course.
If third and 12, you can't run a 5-yard route. So I'm
on those 3 plays, Geno got sacked. So
sure.
in his average holding onto the ball time was over 3 seconds on each one of those plays. I'm just saying, I just watched that particular evaluation on YouTube, and I was just like, wow. I mean,
at some point, the players have to execute. It's third and long. Like you can't run a bunch of routes at 4 or 5 yards. You've got to go get the first down.
Not a bunch, but at least something. You got to have at least a dump off option in there. I mean,
why?
Well, because obviously Geno got sacked and killed the drives. I mean,
the drive was dead anyways. It was third and long. Even if you complete the pass and it goes for 5 yards, the drive's still dead.
You're still giving your team an opportunity. Instead, you take a 7-yard sack. So you've literally handed the team potentially, 10 to 15 yards there, even if you don't convert.
It didn't matter.
So
field position didn't matter in that game.
Okay, so
they got the ball. They got the ball to 5 and drove 95 yards for a touchdown.
Let's take Baltimore out of that equation, Keith. What I'm saying is we've just been horrendous on third down. I was wrong. We didn't happen to fall below 40%. We're close to 30%. So we're at 31.91% on third down, 29th in the league.
And when your quarterback's playing like crap and not throwing the ball to open guys, you're going to have that.
I think it's more complex than that.
It is more complex than that, but you can't look at the all 22 and not see that. That's the point. Is there are guys open who aren't getting the football. Sometimes it's deep and you go, okay, I'm not going to fault Geno for that, because if you don't have a clean pocket, sometimes it's hard to step up, or sometimes you've already moved off that route to one of the others. But when you're getting blitzed and they bring in 2 extra guys and you've got a guy open for a 5-yard gain, you take it.
Yeah.
And
so far, Geno's been protected pretty well, even though we've had those situations. through 9 weeks, we're 18th in passer rating. Last year we were top 10. In fact, last year through the first 7 weeks, Geno was number 1 in the NFL.
Yeah.
Expected points added, we're 19th. We're 18th, 19th in yards per game, 23rd in interception percentage. Geno's not having a great year. So let's just set Geno aside. I know that that's the kind of the center of the heartbeat of the team there on the offensive side, but what can we do as a team to scheme this team to victory and assist Geno in getting some rhythm and getting some confidence back, as well as maybe having the run game help him a little bit.
Well, I mean that's the first part, is getting the run game going. Because when the run game is going and the Seahawks get into their play action mode, that's when Geno's at his best. Because he's got a really good play fake. He throws well on the run, and so they can get him into space where he can look downfield and do the things he needs to do. But like in this last game, they couldn't run the ball, and so they weren't going play action because Baltimore didn't care. And so that's a big part of it. And again, that's a Baltimore thing, and that defense is just really good, but they've got to be able to run the football. And in order to run the football, honestly, they need some continuity on that offensive line. They need to get their guys in there so they're working together, so they're communicating, so they're doing all the things that they need to do so that they can run the ball. And if that happens, then I think the offense opens up.
Yeah. I think the opportunities are there. I mean, Washington's not a great defense at all.
No,
I think
really not.
that we're going to be able to move the ball on them. I've already highlighted some of their cornerback play against the run. I think that, and we've talked about this, but I think Zach Charbonnet is the key to the future identity of this team. We just, with Kenneth Walker, I love Kenneth Walker. He's got some big playability. Obviously, anytime he can get outside and get beyond the first level of the defense, he's a home run waiting to happen. The problem is our blocking up front has dictated that he's not getting yards before contact the way that I think he needs to be able to have that opportunity. And Zach Charbonnet is just much more of a physical, violent downhill runner. And I would love to see him have more opportunities every week to be able to get that going for the Seahawks and kind of build a physical dynamic that this team doesn't have on offense right now. You've got DK Metcalf is a very physical player and kind of gives us that little bit of identity at the receiver position. You've got a couple of guys like Bradford on the offensive line and Abe Lucas when he's healthy. That kind of give that to us a physicality on the offensive line, but we just don't have that in any other spot. And I think that would be very helpful if we had that and relied on that, be able to rely on a solid running game to help Geno out. Because my goodness, if teams are able to sit back, pin their ears against the Seahawks, defenses have pretty decent success against us, and I think that's why we've been struggling this year. Our offense, our run game on paper looks like it should be top 5. I mean, we've got one top 5 running back in Ken Walker and a guy that's potentially a very much of an impact player sitting back there, and just nothing so far this year. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, if they get the third down conversions up, you'll see more of Charbonnet because they'll have more opportunities. So there's more plays to go around,
and Bobo,
and so that's part of it. But a lot of it's the problems have come up front. They really have. The left side of the offensive line has not produced running lanes, and the right side, while it has at times, it's also produced a lot of sacks. So, there's been a lot of trouble there. And I at some point the guys, they just need these guys to get healthy. They've got to get Bradford back in there instead of Haynes. I think that was a mistake last game.
Bradford was injured last week. That's why he didn't play.
Okay, so he was actually out. I thought that was a coach's call.
I did too initially. Yeah.
So
yeah, I think he's going to be back. I think he's going to be ready. I have the injury report here, and Bradford. Let me look. Bradford did not participate on Thursday, but he did participate fully. Limited participation on Wednesday, so that may have just been a resting situation for him. He's got a knee issue. Let's talk about the defense for a little bit. Coming into this game, I was pretty happy overall with the defense. We were defending the run pretty well. A lot of teams were choosing not to run against us, and of course, we were up a few times in a few different games, and teams were passing against us. We also had a pretty decent pass defense, and then on rushing the quarterback, Seattle was ranked 7th in the NFL in quarterback sacks and then pressure rates and so forth. We were doing pretty well. Boy, Amafe's having a great season, exploding. So talk to me about where you're at with the defense after we just got annihilated last week.
Well, so when I went back and rewatched the film and tried to diagnose that,
I'm sorry that you had to do that.
Yeah, it was a
horror show.
Honestly, it wasn't as bad as I thought, simply because I approached it as if I was scouting a team, not watching a Seahawks game. And so it got to the All-22, and I'm just looking for what's going on. And first of all, there was some horrendous tackling. There were a lot of guys, especially in the secondary, Diggs, Love, even Adams a couple of times, just bouncing off guys and not making tackles. And pretty much everyone at the linebacker position, not named Wagner, but Wagner was making contact with guys 6-7 yards downfield often. So there was a lot of missed tackles. That was part of it. The other part of it was they were really disciplined early. And then there were a couple of mistake plays where they started getting gashed. And then after that, the gap discipline just fell apart. And it was like people were trying to do too much in order to stop from getting, there being a problem, and they're getting themselves out of position trying to cover for someone else who didn't necessarily need covered for. And so once that started to break down, it just fell apart everywhere. And they really needed to reset and be like, okay, let's just do our job. And if we get beat because somebody gets beat, then, that happens. But if we're all trying to do everyone else's job, we're going to get beat no matter what. And they need to.
That seems like a broken record to me.
Well, when they do bad, it's what happens. And it's been, a few years where, at least at the beginning of the season, they would do that a lot, and then they would kind of figure things out.
Why do you think that's inherent to this defense?
I mean, it's got to be coaching, isn't it?
It seemingly is.
Because if
are
you
they
look
asking
around
them
league,
to do too much? I mean, is our defense a kind of an intellectual defense where you've got to account for a lot of different things on each play, or is it just a read and run and tackle defense?
I mean, it's both, depending on the position and who's being asked to do what. There's a lot of there's still opportunities where they're asking guys to 2-gap up front, and that's a much harder thing to do, and not just here's your gap. We don't have the
personnel to do that. We don't really have the personnel to do that.
Mario Edwards.
So
that's what he excels at.
So, what I saw too, in addition to everything that you'd said, and you mentioned it, the gap control, is everything on up front. Our front four, front three really broke down. I think in this game, where guys, you had guys like Draymond Jones have a rating of, I think, 32 or something, Pro Football Focus in this game, run defense, and a couple other ones were very similar. Mario Edwards, another guys that typically you're going to play the run really well. I think this is a game where we really missed Nwasu. And so but how did we get right on the defensive side? We talked about what we need to do on the offense. What do we need to do other than just get back to basics? Trust your scheme, trust your players. What do they need to do?
I mean, you said other than, and that's really the answer. If this team plays disciplined football on defense, they're good. We've seen that. When they start to be undisciplined and they start freelancing, that's when they have issues. Obviously, I'd like to see them be more aggressive. I have been saying that for years. But yeah, I'd like to see them be more aggressive. Bring that an extra player in the pass rush more often. Attack into the backfield, because when you see like Leonard Williams or one of guys in the backfield on a running play, good things happen. And so getting guys to attack can be helpful. I mean, I get that sometimes you do that and then you lose integrity because they cut back behind you and into a big gap that you created by getting too far forward. But honestly, good things happen when you're aggressive, and I'd like to see them do that more.
Like a Jamal Adams type of thing, Devin Witherspoon, or are you talking about an extra edge rusher?
Either.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I mean, I'd like to see Jamal Adams get more up near the line of scrimmage, do more Jamal Adams things.
Yeah, I think he's ready too. I think he's proven that he's fully back to health. He's confident. I do think that that role that he had that first year that he came was very impactful, and I think he can really impact the defense, impact a lot of things in that way. So, and Witherspoon shown that he's very physical and can come up and do things as well in key spots. So
it's hard though because he's also your best cover guy, and so having your best cover guy blitz means that you've got lesser cover guys covering. So while he's physical and he's athletic and he's fast and he can do all the things you want him to do, he's still your best cover guy. But with the Jamal Adams part, I mean, if you're going to keep playing Julian Love, then it better be because you're using Jamal Adams to his best, right? And letting him do what he does best. And so, yeah, get him up near the line of scrimmage, let him fill some gaps and make some tackles and let's get after the quarterback, all those things that he does better than most safeties. If you're not going to do that with him, then get Julian Love off the field. And if you're going to play Jamal Adams back as a safety, then get Julian Love off the field. He hasn't been good this year.
He's been good in spots, but coverage-wise, no. And just then the tackling issue has been...
Because they brought him in because they thought that Ryan Neal wasn't a good enough tackler, where Ryan Neal was great in coverage, but didn't tackle well. So they brought in Love. Love has been just as bad as a tackler. So you spent a lot of extra money on an older player who wasn't better. That move is turning out to be
so far,
it's one of the mistakes of this offseason.
I hope there's an opportunity for Julian Love to come up big. I really do. I think he's a good player. You go watch the tape from last year and the years prior in New York. He really does. He's a playmaker. He's around the ball. He was causing, forced fumbles and recovered fumbles. He wasn't a big interception guy, but he did a lot of other little things for you. So I'm hoping that he can kind of come in. I want to talk about injuries really quick. Derek Hall last week, re-injured quote unquote, his shoulder that he already had an injury for in the offseason. And Pete Carroll was a little worried about it at the beginning of the week. Turns out it wasn't as severe as it could have been. He was a full participant in practice on Wednesday, and then on Thursday as well. So no worries there. Kenny McIntosh started on Wednesday in the injury report as a full participant and then disappeared completely from the injury report on Thursday. We might see Kenny McIntosh for the first time this year, considering that DJ Dallas is battling a shoulder injury, limited in practice on Thursday. And then full participant in practice, Ken Walker, Jamal Adams, Jerron Reed, Tyler Lockett, Trey Brown, Derek Young.
There's the name that I thought you were going to get to. Derek Young, wide receiver. He's tall. He's really fast, very physical, runs like a running back. A guy that they had, you go look at what they were doing in practice and preseason. They had packages built for him, with him playing fullback, with him basically coming in at tight end, essentially. There were a lot of jet sweep opportunities for him because the guy's got some serious wheels. And then he got hurt, had that groin injury, and started the year on IR, and we haven't seen any of that. I'm very curious as to what happens now that he's back. Because
I don't know that I don't know that he plays this week. He's just returned, designated for return. He started limited participation in practice on Wednesday with a groin. And that's kind of what he had the surgery for. And then a full participant on Thursday, which is great news for this team, really. And then Anthony Bradford was limited participation on Wednesday, and then did not participate in practice on Thursday. I think that's just holding him out, just precautionary.
I don't know. The did not participate list of Jordan Brooks, Anthony Bradford, Mario Edwards, but that's just a rest, and then DK Metcalf. That's worrisome. I mean, that's the 4 players that you don't want sitting on the sidelines, and that's what they were doing on
DK
Thursday.
is going to be there, but Jordan Brooks, it sounds like he's been limited a little bit by the hamstring. Well, he was not participating on Wednesday either.
Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting spot because now you're going to look at maybe having a guy like Bush out there,
Bush or Radigan
full time. What?
Bush or Radigan?
Yeah. And out there full time, and that's a lot of speed that's missing without Brooks. But what we saw in the preseason was that Bush was better in coverage.
I agreed.
Out of the 4 middle linebackers, he's the best in coverage. And that's saying something since one of them's Bobby. But Bobby's he doesn't quite have the speed to keep up with some of the plays this year. Whatever. But Bush also is a guy that misses a lot of tackles, more so than Brooks, and even more so than Radigan. But so we'll see what happens with that. Maybe they'll rotate the 2 guys. Maybe they'll find ways to play more Jamal Adams in the middle there on passing downs, and go with extra defensive backs, go full dime.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Bobby and Jamal.
You're going to do that in this game anyway, Keith. I mean, if there's going to be a game to do that, this would be the guy that you would face. Yeah. Howell is throwing the ball like 40 plus times a game. I mean, this is a game. This is a team that does not like to run the ball, even though they've got some pretty decent running backs. I was going to comment on that they've got Brian Robinson Jr. and Antonio Gibson and Chris Rodriguez as their running backs. You would think that they'd be able to kind of balance that attack a little bit more. No, not really. Sam Howell's their guy. They throw the ball around the field a lot. They lead the league in first down attempts, throwing the ball like 78%, which is kind of crazy, which really. So they're constantly throwing. So this would be a game where you would blitz, you would rush 4 and put extra defensive back in, in kind of a balanced way, and see if we can get him, get to him in 4. Their offensive line is kind of suspect. They do have some good weapons. I mean,
Look
Terry
at the sack.
McLaurin.
If you look at the sack rate, he's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL
44
by a
sacks already.
very wide margin.
Yeah, halfway through the season, he's got 44 sacks.
Yeah, so
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I didn't. I forgot to look at that and update this for today's show. But a week ago, when I looked at it, he had 40. That was the most. The second most was 28.
Yeah.
And I mean that's crazy. That's 12 sacks more through 9 weeks.
Well, I mean, you put that, you extrapolate that out. That's like 70 some odd sacks for the season, which would be a record, given up. So
I think the Derek Carr, no, not Derek Carr, David Carr will have that beat still, because that his rookie year with all those sacks was insane. But yeah, I mean, you're looking. Sam Howell is in that is on that pace. He's going to be up there, with David Carr, and it's. Yeah, I mean, he's given up. And some of that's the offensive line being suspect, which is also part of the reason why they don't run, is because they don't run block well. But some of it is just you got a guy that's holding onto the ball forever. You're going to have opportunities to get home.
I agree. And the reason he holds the ball is because they like to take chunk plays. They like to just throw the ball down the field. This is a real opportunity for Boye Mafe. I mean, talk about a player that could have like 3 sacks, 4 sacks in a game. This could be the game. They could stunt him around, move him around. They're going to have to account for him. And a guy like Williams and a guy like Jaron Reed. I think everyone on that, the front 7 really, including like Jamal Adams, could really benefit from this game. Could end up having, we had 9 sacks the other week. This could be, or 11 against the Giants. This could be one of those games where we just really kind of just tee off. I'd love to see that.
The Seahawks had 11 sacks against Daniel Jones in one game, and Daniel Jones is still giving up 12 fewer sacks than Sam Howell on the year.
So if they really want to go get it, I mean, this would be a game.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a real opportunity for Diggs on the back end, because they want chunk plays. And if there's pressure, those balls coming out to the receivers deep are going to float a little bit. He's going to have an opportunity to go get a couple picks. And I really want to see him go do it. Go get some turnovers, guy, and make it work. I really expect him to have at least 1, but getting 2 is a possibility in this one. And the same goes with for a guy like Woolen on the other side. Now, he hasn't been as good this year as he was last year. But he's also been battling injuries this year, which he didn't deal with last year. And so, but he's still been good. And to give him an opportunity with some passes that are interceptable, I think we're gonna see him get one in this game too. So, this really is a get right game possibility for Seattle, and they just got to go do it, right?
Prediction time. This is a team that allows other teams to score on them. They've given up over 30 points, I think 4 times this year so far. And then they struggle to score themselves as well. They're a pretty decent team, but middling as far as scoring offense. What do you see for this game, Keith? What's the crystal ball point to?
31-17.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking.
They've given up 30 plus points 4 times, and then they traded away both their pass rushers. Right? This is one of those games where Seattle needs to get right offensively. I think they can because they're not going to get after Geno the way other teams have because they don't have the pass rushers anymore too. And, if you give Geno Smith time, he'll pick you apart. Even when he's having a year like this where he's not playing as well as last year, he can still pick you apart when you give him time. And this is a team that's going to struggle to rush the passer. So I think Seattle's offense is going to get right, put up some points, and do some things. And I just don't see this Washington offense sustaining drives against Seattle's defense. Seattle's defense is going to come out hungry and ready to kill some people after getting run over last week. You're going to see Seattle's defense just really kind of impose their will at times because they were embarrassed last week. And it's going to be, Sam Howell that's going to face the brunt of that embarrassment.
So before Chase Young and Montez Sweat were traded, they were 10th in sacks, 20th in pressure rate, and 20th in quarterback knockdowns. Now that's going to significantly drop for them. They didn't replace those guys. They just jettisoned them. I was thinking the same sort of score, basically like 34-17, 34-20, 34-14, something like that. You don't often expect double-digit wins in the NFL, but this is kind of set up that way. I really do think that Seattle will be able to get back and dictate terms on offense. I'm hoping. I mean, if they can't do it against this team, I don't know who they would be able to do it against. This is one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and it just got worse by trading away their two best players. And on defense, there's opportunities here to get extra possessions for our offense. I mean, if we don't come out of this game with at least 2 turnovers and hopefully don't turn the ball over ourselves, this is a walk-away win because I think that we really do kind of capitalize on that. And we've got players that are able to kind of generate turnovers. I'd love to see Woolen have a game. He's really kind of struggled a little bit. I think Trey Brown's outplayed him. Devin Witherspoon, certainly. I think Woolen needs to kind of get right in this game as well. And he was going to have some opportunities in single coverage and in zone to make a play on the ball. And I'd like to see that a little bit more. I know that he still has the speed, even though he had the knee. You saw him, I think there was a couple of special teams plays, or I think that the interception return for a touchdown where he was the kind of the trailing blocking guy for Trey Brown, returning that, that kick. I think he clocked out at like over 22 miles an hour. So I know he's got that long speed still. And I'd just like to see that more break on the ball reaction speed that I haven't seen from him this year.
Yeah, he hasn't looked as confident. And I think that just has to do with the injuries that he dealt with in training camp in the beginning of the year. He didn't have those last year. He was able to just come in and be physical and be himself, and he looked really confident. And this year he's been banged up and trying to play through it, and the confidence doesn't look like it's there. But I mean, the physical talent sure is. So
okay, I got a question.
I just think it's a matter of time.
Who's your offensive player of the game in this game?
Tyler Lockett.
Wow. Interesting.
I think Lockett's
So are we talking like 10 receptions for 120 yards and a touchdown, 2 touchdowns, maybe?
1 or 2 touchdowns. Yeah. I think he's going to feast.
Nice. Yeah. I was thinking the same thing with Njigba. This would be like his breakout game where he's just on fire. That's certainly possible, especially with Emmanuel Forbes. I just, there was something athletic about Emmanuel Forbes, and he had that top end speed, but he was only like 5'9", $170 or something like that, as far as height, weight, speed.
Yeah.
And the teams are just taking advantage of him, and I think we can do that.
The whole $168 is what he was on as far as on the draft profile stuff. Like, what drafting a guy that's that size? That pick made no sense. He wasn't a first round talent. And then before you considered the size, like
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the
Mm-hmm.
worst picks of the first 2 days of the draft,
Yeah.
in my
And
opinion.
Kendall Fuller's been struggling too. So their top 2 corners are struggling. Benjamin St. Just is the guy that is their best corner right now. And he's also just kind of middling as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how about on defense, Keith? Who really pops in this game?
Well, Boye Mafe comes to mind. I expect him to just have a monster game, but I think that's kind of a cop-out answer because he's always going to have a good game at this point. But as far as actually popping and showing up, I want to say Jamal Adams. I think this is an opportunity for him to make an impact, to get a couple of sacks, to just kill someone who's coming across the
Pop
middle.
the ball out. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And just make some major impact plays. I just think like this is the type of team that he's going to play well against.
Nice. Yeah, I like those 2 players you just mentioned. I will say this. I think people are going to start to double team Boye Mafe. He's been one of the few at least double team players with his production in the league. And I think people are going to start taking note of that and account for him a little bit more. So we'll see if he can keep that production up as he kind of gains more attention.
That's what's happened the last couple of years is you have, Darrell Taylor 2 years ago was very much not a double teamed guy and then started to get double teamed down the stretch. Last year it was Uchenna Nwasu. And this year it's going to be Boye Mafe, but the hope is that Darrell Taylor picks up the slack on the other side, because if you have extra guys trying to account for Mafe, other guys have to be able to get through because now there's fewer blockers on the other side. And so you're going to start to see Darrell Taylor or Jamal Adams or one of the interior guys like Leonard Williams start to be able to make some impact.
Nice. I like it. Okay, so let's get out of here. We both predict a win. I certainly see that. This is a great rebound game for Seattle. Seattle would end up being 6-3, and potentially next week, I think with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think is who we play. I can't remember for sure. That doesn't sound familiar. I don't have
it's the Rams.
In front of me.
The Rams are falling.
I think that, we've got an opportunity here to be 7-3, and there's nothing wrong with that before we hit that nasty stretch. I think that we can do that. That game I still have a hangover from that game last week. It was so impactful as far as just getting soundly beat by a team that's clearly Super Bowl ready. And you thought you were kind of fringy Super Bowl ready, and you just got put in your place by a superior team. But I think there's still opportunities for growth this year. The offense still hasn't been in sync. The defense, I think, can get better. So this is one of those games to do that. So looking forward to it.
At some point, this offense is going to get right.
It seems like it should. We've been saying that though for weeks, right?
We have been, and the offensive line continue to shuffle in new guys, different combinations. At some point,
Abe Lucas maybe next week.
Yep, we're about a week away from Abe Lucas getting back.
That's huge.
Getting him there, getting Bradford in back at guard. Hopefully he'll get healthy. Charles Cross will continue to work his way back into shape and do better on the other side, and they'll get right at some point this year. And when the offense takes off, this is going to be a really good football team. That's going to be hard to beat in the playoffs, but until that happens, the defense has to hold down the fort and keep them in games.
Yeah. I haven't really heard anybody talking about this out in Seahawks land about the offensive line and getting all the guys back and what a difference that might make down the stretch. And that, I think we should probably talk about that a little bit more, because I think that is a thing, and it could definitely be a thing in the next 8 weeks. And yeah, I'd love to see that for sure. All right.
Yeah, I'm convinced it's going to happen at some point. Like I'm still, and that's not just hope. That's just looking at track records for guys that we know can play. Guys like
I think
Abe
losing
Lucas.
Abe Lucas was very impactful.
Yeah,
We just really haven't given him enough credit. Yeah. All right. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. SeahawksPlaybook.com has all the stuff you want to find on the show. And then find us on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube. And when you hit the subscribe button, you'll get our shows in your feed every week. We usually do 2 or 3. And we'd love to have you join us in the off season as well. We devote everything from the time we tap out in the playoffs to the NFL draft and free agency. And so it's a great time to come and listen and join the show in the off season as well. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.